You know, when it comes to gaining muscle mass, there's a lot of approaches here. So if you feel like you need help with it, that means that's kind of a good thing, right? In the sense of like that means you feel like there's an area in which you can capitalize because that means you're leaving a lot of gains on the table. So first thing, strength train, right? So there should be some type of component to your training that revolves around strength. Next, right, you want to look at how it's structured, right? So you want to, I personally recommend hitting, your muscle groups twice a week. You never got better at anything ever doing it only once a week, right? Because there is a skill component to training as well as the active component of training. The training session should be built in a manner of which where you get better, but there's also a skill to it, right? To get better at a squat, to get better at a deadlift. That'll allow you in the long term to lift more weight, stay injury free, or at least, slow down some of those aspects. And then, so uh, the free 6 day push pull leg split that I have in the chat already that you could download on PDF for free, right? Something I'm trying to provide to the community resources, right? So that no one has excuses, something like that. So you have strength movement initially, with when it comes to strength training, um, we're talking rep ranges as from as low as 1 to as high as 6. Some people say 8. Once you go into 8, now you're tipping into hypertrophy because hypertrophy, muscle growth, muscle mass, right? You want to have anything from 8 to 12, and again, some people will say 15. But if I move with a dominant movement, bench, squat, deadlift, overhead press initially, most bang for my buck, I transition to accessory work. Doesn't mean it's lesser than. It just means that I'm going to use them as a benefit to the first movement I did. Excuse me while I take a sip of coffee. All right. So I'm going to transition to my accessory movements, which are going to allow me to again still get better, right? Because a stronger muscle doesn't necessarily mean a bigger muscle, just like a bigger muscle doesn't necessarily mean a stronger muscle, right? That's why bodybuilders they train hypertrophy, which is literally the inflation of the muscle. That's why they have big muscles. Now, if you look at somebody like a power lifter who's way stronger than a bodybuilder, doesn't have the best muscle mass necessarily. Now, there's some outliers, of course, where people can power lift and they'll look jacked, right? And power lifters are jacked, but it's different, right? Like a bodybuilder might look shredded with big muscle bellies and fuller look and a more proportionate look because they specifically train all the small intricacies of the human body, whereas a power lifter is trying to maximize strength. And maximizing strength doesn't necessarily mean you're going to produce the best hypertrophy outcome. They're different, right? When it comes to training, there's a lot of modalities, a lot of things you can do. If you want muscle mass, an easy way to train, I'll lay out a year, or excuse me, I'll lay out half a year of training that you could repeat twice. These are 3 cycles you want to look for. All right, first, I want to do a hypertrophy cycle. And when I say cycle, training cycle, I want to do it the least amount of time that I want to do it is 8 weeks, right? But 12 weeks is optimal. So again, there's 12 weeks. Then I'm going to transition to a strength cycle, roughly about the same amount of time, right? Again, on the low end, 8 weeks, on the optimal end, 12 weeks. That's 24 training weeks, right? 52 weeks in a year. Then I'm going to transition to a speed and endurance training cycle. Speed and endurance, again, that can be on the lower end, 6 to 8 weeks. All right, we do the math there. We're about halfway through the year. Rinse and repeat a full year of training. 12 weeks hypertrophy, make the muscle bigger. 12 weeks strength training, 8 to 12 weeks strength training. I make the muscle stronger. And then speed and endurance, I make the muscle that I've made bigger. I made the muscle that I made stronger, and I gave it some endurance and I give it some speed and power. All right. So that would be my recommendation on how you build muscle mass. Anything more than that, you might have to reach out in the DM because I'm giving out all the secrets. All right. And then we have another question here. Um, to how does one determine their level of good cholesterol versus bad cholesterol? Now, again, I briefly covered this. Here's the thing. I would recommend to the best of everyone's ability to get their blood checked. Man, on the low end once a year. That'd be like the super low end. When you're getting your physical, again, those of you in the military, you have to do your PHA or whatever once a year. Hopefully th're doing some blood panels or you could request it and they can share the information with you. That way you could actually know the areas in which you're deficient in. So, because again, a correlation doesn't mean causation. Just because it may do something doesn't mean it will do something. Um, that being said, um, if if I don't know the areas in which I need to improve, how do I improve them? So my first recommendation, and again, I'm not a doctor, so go talk to your doctor. But I would get my blood checked, right? I would want to see things like I would like to see the blood panel, and I would speak with my doctor to help me interpret it. Again, if you have experience in this area, you know, you've done it a lot. I've had my blood check often, so I can interpret it, my own results to the best of my ability. But again, I'll outsource for things that I don't know. Um, but you have to know where you are in order to see if you even need to make an improvement, right? Because just because I eat foods that may cause high cholesterol doesn't mean I have high cholesterol. And a simple blood test can let me know whether or not I do. Now, once I know, I can make the necessary adjustments, right? Like if I'm having if the lifestyle I have does not align well with the diet I have, then yes, I'll definitely need to make the necessary adjustments. And now that's the best or that is the most comfortable I feel getting into that portion of the conversation simply because we kind of already covered the dietary aspect of the question. But blood test would be the easy recommendation on that. So that is all as far as the Facebook group questions are concerned. I'm going to check the chat here, see that we have a couple. And if you have them, throw them in there. Throw them in there. That's what we're doing today. All right. So chicken rice are my main food sources. I'm told I need to add fiber, but I don't know what are the pros and cons of fiber and a diet. If I'm getting results without lag and exercise, no gut issues. Fiber. Okay. Fiber is absolutely needed. It's not as much as you think. But the thing is, you heard me say something like rest, digest, right? So your body, um, and specifically you, brother, you're into it, you're tracking, you're making progress, right? So the better you can get certain things dialed in, the better those results can be, right? I can't tell you how many games I left on the table because I eventually learned to figure things out, right? Like I eventually learned that, oh, good flexibility means proper movement. Proper movement means better muscle activation. Better muscle activation. It means better mind muscle connection. Better mind muscle connection leads to better growth, right? So like I remember looking, granted I don't have the best calves in the world, but I would look at my calves and be like, man, I do calves, 3 times a week. These jokers ain't growing. But it wasn't until I learned that I had limited ankle mobility, right? And then once I worked on ankle mobility, then I started realizing I could trigger my calves better, but also my squat got better, which means my quads were growing, which means my glutes were growing better, all those things. Now, I say all that to say this: fiber is absolutely needed simply because it's going to help you process the food that you have. Because the thing is, if your diet lacks fiber, it's just like a one-way street, right? Like the food comes in, your body hangs on to the best that it can, and then it gets rid of what it doesn't need, or what your body determines what it doesn't need. Fiber kind of slows down that process in the sense of like you'll actually absorb significantly more amounts of those nutrients that you are consuming, right? So it's not just the consumption of quality foods, it's the absorption of the quality foods. And then you go to the final step of um how do I how do I want to say this appropriately as best as I can? So digestion, there we go. So we have the consumption, the absorption, and the digestion of foods. During the nutrition 101 class, there was a supplement question that was brought up, and one of my pieces of advice when it comes to supplementation, and this applies to food as well. If I'm eating a food item, if I'm consuming a supplement of some sort, right, like a protein shake, and I'm running to the restroom within 30 minutes to an hour, and that the only thing that was different was that thing that I ate. My body is communicating with me, right? Now, it could be a variety of things. Maybe I didn't have food all day, and then I finally get to a meal. My body is just going to react to it because I didn't give it food throughout the day, right? That may happen to some people. You may be an individual that has IBS, whatever the case is. But when you add fiber to the diet, you're adding like a certain just quality to the diet overall that allows better absorption, right? Because it's not just the consumption, right? Absorption, digestion. So or you hear me say like rest, digest, right? So when I add fiber, and it's not a lot, it's 30 grams of fiber. Like 30 grams of fiber is super easy to get into your diet for a guy about your size and your age, right? Again, I'm not a nutritionist. I can provide guidance, can help you along the way, but your average guy, excuse me, your average guy only really needs about 35 grams of fiber. So it's not as much as you think. If you do it right, you almost don't even have to think about it because you know you're going to get it in. Pause. That being said, if you have an overconsumption of fiber, then you'll have a problem with the digestion portion of your diet, right? So then, and that actually is uncomfortable. Then you're constipated. You can't digest the food appropriately. And the processes tend to slow down. It's like having high traffic in your gut, which is just no bueno. All right, moving on to another one. So he says, I've been doing heavy strength training for 6 months straight. I want to do a decompression week to give the CNS a break. Since weight is going to be so much lighter, what rep numbers should be per set to still maximize? Okay, if you're still live on the call, are you doing percentage-based lifts? Yes or no? And I can better answer your question. Until I get that response, I'll give you the best guidance with what you wrote. So, hypertrophy training, right? Just because I'm trying to swell the muscle doesn't mean I'm not using heavy weight. When I say strength train, I'm talking percentage-based lifts in regards to bench, squat, deadlift, overhead press, and then transitioning to an RPE-based, a rate of perceived exertion-based program on the accessories, right? On something like RPE, I want to have I want to be in the 8 to 9 range, meaning 8 is like I have 2 reps in the tank, 9, I have 1 rep in the tank, 10, I have 0 reps in the tank of good quality repetitions, right? Form is everything. But when it comes to bench squat deadlift, I'm lifting a percentage of my 1 rep max or near 1 rep max or rep max, things like that. So with that being said, you can only lift heavy or what people will deem heavy for so long, right? That's why I said in cycles, right? So, um, if you're can you train for greater than 12 weeks in strength? Absolutely. But as you mentioned, decompression, or some people call it a deload, then you can absolutely what a deload is every 4 to 6 weeks you listen to your body, because your body will let you know if you feel yourself lethargic, low energy, you're starting to get sick. That means you may have been training too heavy for too long. All right. So you do what's called a deload week. A deload week is I would keep your training identical. Okay, hold on. He answered. He says, I usually do 2 warm-up sets with 40 to 50% and 3 workout sets with about 80%, always shooting for 10 to 12. Okay, so that hmm. Okay, so I will answer this with that information. Okay, and I'll continue saying what I'm saying. So okay, so what I would consider when I'm doing reps of 10 to 12, I wouldn't necessarily call like so here's the thing. I guess it depends on the language people use when it comes to training. When I say strength training, um, that is intentionally trying to get stronger, right? Which is why I broke it up into the 3 cycles. I know I said strength train, strength train, strength train. Did it again without messing up. Yay. Um, what I'm saying is right, lift weights, right? So and then when you lift weights, you have to lift weights for the goal, right? So I have to first establish a goal that I'm trying to achieve, then I'm going to lift weights. So if I'm trying to get stronger, for example, Collins, he said muscle mass. I didn't say necessarily go try to be your strongest self, right? Bodybuilders are strong individuals, but they're not as strong as they could be if they transitioned their training to strength training. Now, when I see you saying you're at reps of 10 to 12%, um, or excuse me, when I see you say that you have reps of 10 to 12, you're training hypertrophy, which is growth. So that should align with your goals first and foremost. First and foremost. Now, whether I'm training for strength, whether I'm training for hypertrophy, again, hypertrophy is to swell the muscle. I'm still going to program as a coach. I will still program again what is deemed a deload week. What that looks like is, for example, my week wouldn't change. The only thing that would change would be the RPE, rate of perceived exertion. You could also look up RIR, reps in reserve, and then I would back off, right? So if I'm saying, let's say on a Monday I'm doing chest, I did 10 to 12, he's saying 80%, I would drop it down to 65, 70%. If I'm shoulder pressing, 85 pounds on a, seated shoulder press, on the top end. Oh, you're good, brother. No worries. But if let's say I'm seated shoulder pressing 85 pounds on the top set, for 3 sets. All right, when I'm doing a deload, maybe I'm grabbing the 55s or the 60s. All a deload is literally that I'm removing some I'm lowering the intensity. If I lower the intensity, I have to lower the weight that I'm using, right? So, um, That's what a deload is. And you want to do those every 4 to 6 weeks. It depends, right? Like just pay attention to what your body's saying. Like I said, if your joints are super sore, if you're feeling lethargic, if your mood is all wonky, if you're super tired and you're not, or you're getting sick and you feel like you're not recovering from your workouts, then just do, take a week, do all of your training as you normally would, just at lighter loads. So if you're doing 80%, do 65, 70%. If you're doing, if you're strength training, let's say, and you peak at 90 to 95%, you either choose to test out of your strength training cycle, or you can reset and continue to train, but you reset with the new 1 rep maxes or rep maxes that you have. You reset that and you restart your training cycle at the lower percentages, increasing over the weeks. If you're hypertrophy training, right? So you do your, let's say I'm benching 225 for rep or for sets of 10 to 12 for 3 sets. My deload week, maybe I'm doing 205, 215 for 10 to 12 till like I'm still getting work because we're humans at the end of the day. Like I'm not gonna be able to keep you out of the gym for a week. Um, but I also don't want you to be bored while you're in the gym, right? So what I do as a coach is I will program a very similar week, right? Maybe even throw in some new things or things that we're going to see in the future, but a similar week to where my recommendations are, hey, keep doing what you're doing, keep grinding, keep going, just have a little bit of faith because this slight pause in your training is going to propel you because you can't continue to take from the well of gains, right? If I just take and take and take and take and take, your body is going to give. Like your body will literally like shut down. It'll be like, nah, man, I can't do that. And that's where having the training maturity to kind of to take the pause when necessary plays such a key role. So that's all the questions on the Facebook group, and that is all the questions in the chat. I'll leave it open for another second. If y'all have anything else to ask, I'll wait a second, and then again, just some housekeeping notes. So comment on everything, guys. Guys and gals, I appreciate the love and support. I appreciate all that you're doing. But comment on things, post things, ask things. I'm going to continue to do my very best to provide the best value that I can. I've upgraded my camera. I got a ring light now so that you can see this mug. I just want to produce content that can be easily digested and understood because there's a lot of information out there that can get confusing. I also just want to provide for the community that we're trying to build, and I want us to build it. So your participation in the group is going to be significantly more important than my participation in the group. I'm going to continue to post content. There'll be videos coming, guides, continue with guides and things like that, like how do you eat when you travel, flexibility guide, how to eat around the holidays, shopping recommendations, things like that. Something as simple as, like, most people don't realize, just shop on the outside of the grocery store. Well, most of the trash is in the aisles, right? So you go into the aisles for a very specific thing that you need, and then you leave the aisle. Because think about all of the gross stuff that's in your grocery store. Very, very few of those items are in the outside aisles. They do that for a reason. But yeah, just things like that, right? I just want to provide value and your participation, your support, share the group. We're near 200 members. That's incredible. And that doesn't happen without you guys. So share the group. I want to do giveaways. I want to, again, we have a guest tomorrow, William Enzinger, strongman extraordinaire, stud, absolutely awesome man. Tune in, ask questions, things like that. So, your participation, I can't understate it. I'm absolutely blown away. I told myself when I started this, if there was one person on the live and the one person was me, I was still gonna do it. And we're sitting here with people live on Facebook and Zoom, and I'm absolutely blown away. I just appreciate each and every one of you. But I don't see any more questions, so I'm gonna sign off because I'm pretty sure you heard enough of me. So this is Reclaim King, Reclaim Fit, and remember, it's your life. Reclaim it.